All right. Um, Welcome all to this week's Kubernetes meetup, Kubernetes Cloud Provider Integration meetup. Uh, so uh, the main topics that we're dealing with currently is end-to-end testing and also CSI work. So we can start off with whatever updates you have to give, and then we can go forward from there. Just feel free, anyone can.
Sure, I'll start. No updates for me on CSI things, but yeah, that's coming still.
Okay, so you're working on CSI for AWS, right?
Yeah, I talked to Nick a little bit last week, but I haven't done anything since then.
Okay, do you have a plan for when is there a milestone that you're working towards with the CSI for AWS EBS?
Yeah, the really the first milestone is just going to be wrapping up the existing volume plugin in basically those sidecar containers for the CSI plugin. There's already a framework for doing this. I just haven't done it with the volume plugin actually yet.
Okay, all right.
I have an exciting update. One is that I can attend these meetings finally.
Yay.
Another one is that I got word from Thomas Xiao, who's in my Shanghai team, that he has what is probably a completed version of the broken out provider to test soon. So we're going to be able to probably apply some of our methodologies and logic on that as a test case, so we can validate our approach, which is super exciting and certainly the result of a lot of hard work on that team. So there are some questions I had because I haven't been able to attend. I wasn't sure where we landed on the CNCF repos versus in-company repos and that stuff, because that'll affect where test point and such. I also will need some help getting stuff into test grid.
Yeah, it's on mute.
So that's a good segue into the conversation about the test grid and discussion there. Mitra has joined us today from our EngProd team, which corresponds to SIG testing, more or less. And she works with Eric Feda and others here on our side in that area. And specifically, I asked her if she or someone on her team can help us with providing guidance for other cloud providers to submit test results to TestGrid. And as we chatted, we came up with an idea that might be an interesting experiment to actually host an instance of TestGrid, which we deploy as a multi-cloud application. And we can round robin for actually serving the TestGrid dashboard to whatever cloud providers want to participate in that. I think that might be an interesting example of a multi-cloud application that we deploy, and a good demonstration of the collaboration that's going on in this working group. So if anyone is interested in participating in that, let Mitra or me know, and we'd be happy to work on that.
And I'll circulate back within a couple of days about the contact for getting all the dashboards set up, as well as like helping out. And
okay. How do we contact you, Mitra?
So I am on GitHub. My handle is Mitra V. I can also, is there a Slack for the?
There is. I'll make sure you've got that info.
Okay, perfect.
So I'm hopeful that we can make some progress in 110 in that direction. Again, the hope is that each of the cloud providers will begin to run, I think the best starting point is conformance test suite, and post test results just pass fail back to a single dashboard. Those tests are intended to be less flaky, and also just demonstrate the basic functionality. I think in order for it to be truly useful, we need to ensure that it is exercising the cloud provider interface. So that's another task that Mitra and I will start on. But if others have cycles and are looking for a way to contribute, that would be extremely helpful. On the repository discussion, I did talk with Caleb Miles and Brian Grant about moving code that is currently in the Kubernetes repo. According to the rules as I understand it today, since that's code that's already in the Kubernetes org, we can absolutely, it's grandfathered in, there's no high rigor process involved in moving it to another location that is also owned by CNCF. So I think we need to have a thread or a doc that talks about naming conventions or just some consistency, what folks need in that regard. And as soon as we know what we want, it sounds like Caleb can go ahead and make those repositories, and we can just mirror initially or move and clone back in. Whatever the right structure is, it sounds like it's mostly determining what our requirements are, not getting through any organizational hoops. So Case, I know you are interested in this, so I'll make sure that you are involved in that conversation, but my idea is just to start a thread in the working group email mailing list. And if other folks have requirements or needs or just questions, feel free to jump on that thread.
So Jago, quick question. When you say it's code that's already in Kubernetes core, we have some cloud providers that we want to let in, like DigitalOcean, that's not in core. And also, you know, if this repository is going to be maintained by Amazon, Azure, and Google Cloud, it's going to add new code that's already not in there. That's not going to be an issue, I assume.
So the initial question that I was attempting to answer was for cloud providers that are currently in tree, which is code that is currently owned legally by CNCF. What mechanism can we use to move to a different repository, but still have it be owned by the CNCF and not have whatever the legal process for code to be donated from or transferred from CNCF back to the sponsoring organization. That is fraught with legal peril and fiery hoops that I think none of us wants to tread if we can help it. So the idea is simply create a different repository in the Kubernetes org that is effectively de facto managed by the sponsoring organization, but is still open source software that is owned legally by the CNCF. Others jump in if I misstated the goal.
No, I think that's right. And we want to apply, I mean, there's a lot of shared optimizations that happen as a result. So for example, deploying the CNCF CLA bot, a lot of the labeling conventions, it just makes it feel a lot more like part of the project. And not only that, but I know from the Azure perspective and probably from GK and others as well, is that we don't want to just close off development to Microsoft employees. We want to have this be a community effort as much as anything else, because we definitely want to not have this be proprietary. There's nothing about this that should be proprietary. It should be 100% open and available, just like everything else. So moving it to CNCF based repos. So I would assume we'd have like Kubernetes-Azure-provider and Kubernetes-GKE provider, or some sort of taxonomy that works across providers, that would make it feel very much like its inclusion in the rest of the project.
Yeah, and one thing that I've found at Google, I expect will be true in other companies, is we have other, like the TensorFlow team or other teams that I don't even know who they are, who find and fix issues in the GCP specific code base. And so that's helpful, and we want to keep that going without adding organizational hoops to get access to some private repo somewhere. That's not the So even within the company, it's helpful to have it be in GitHub in a publicly searchable repo.
Cool. Okay.
So again, I'll start that thread. As far as the code that doesn't currently exist and isn't currently owned by CNCF, there are processes by which code is donated to CNCF. I think it's outside the scope of this discussion to figure out what that is, but I think it makes sense to have the same conventions apply across all cloud providers. Our goal in this working group is that there are not two classes of cloud providers. That's what much of this effort for the entry cloud providers moving out is about. So I'm happy to connect people if they're searching for that and unable to find it, but that hasn't been my goal so far.
Maybe we should just document that, saying, if you're a new cloud provider that's not in tree, interested in getting into the CNCF repos, contact XYZ or do XYZ.
Yeah, and I mean, there's even a good place to put that. So yeah, I definitely think that's a good plan.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks for raising that point.
Also, just a minor point on the naming, but I noticed that most of the repos or prospective repos all seem to be called such and such cloud controller manager. I think at some point we probably want to expand that a little bit because we're going to want more than just the cloud controller managers in those repos.
Yeah, I agree. Volume types or other things.
Volume types, start scripts, test infra, all that kind of thing.
I would agree.
Do you have a proposal for a name?
No, I'm hoping that by bringing it up, someone else will come up with something good.
Okay. Just cloud plugins or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, are we thinking one repo? I mean, not owned by the individual cloud provider, but basically one repo per cloud provider.
That makes sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I would strongly advocate for that for a number of reasons.
So this would go into the thread, right, Jago? Consistency.
Sorry, taking notes. Say again.
So we just discussed something where we decided that the different parts of the cloud plugins, like the volume plugins, maybe there's a networking plugin, and also the cloud controller manager itself would go into one repo. That would go into the thread, right? We were talking about a thread that talks about, or a doc that talks about naming and consistency of the new repository that we create.
Sure. With the caveat that if there ends up being too much discussion and it gets too confusing with CSI and flex volumes and something that Walter stumbled on the other day in the scheduler itself, I would like to prioritize setting up the repositories and not bottoming out on every line of code that is maybe associated with a cloud provider.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I think we were just talking about the naming.
Yeah.
So naming and what the rules are for getting into them. Let's just focus on that.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. I feel like we got some amount of resolution there. The next thing that I want to talk about is here Daniel's update. He's been working on the end-to-end tests.
Yeah, sadly, I didn't get to work very much on it. Very busy again this week. Basically, what I did achieve was creating a directory in this test end-to-end directory for all these for all the tests, and basically creating a dummy test and trying to get it to run in the end-to-end suite. Yeah, but the thing is, the code gets compiled, etc. But it seems like the dummy test isn't included in these end-to-end runs. So I guess I'm missing some kind of hook here to get my new files into. So basically, if I copy my dummy test into the examples file, it gets executed. But if I have it in my own file, it isn't included. So I guess that's something that I'm missing. But as soon as I get this to run, I can start to write tests.
Cool. Okay.
Yep.
And Nick Turner from Amazon, is there some update on the CSI?
So we actually submitted tickets to our legal team to see if we could create repositories for CSI and the cloud provider stuff. We had originally created the tickets for us to own the repositories, but based on the conversation that was just had, I think we will maybe amend those to suggest that they're owned by CNCF and we just use repositories that are created by CNCF. Does that sound like a good idea to you guys?
I think that's right. I mean, I think I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on TV, so I suggest you do check with your own legal team and processes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, like, would it be preferred for just for consistency's sake for us to all do the same thing? Or should, I don't think we really care if it's owned by us or CNCF in terms of my team. So we had initially submitted a ticket to ask for repositories that were owned by us or by Amazon in our repository or in our GitHub organization. But if it's just for consistency's sake, maybe we ask for the repos to be owned by CNCF.
Yeah, I think for consistency, I think the default ought to be that the consistency wins, unless you have a compelling reason not to.
Yeah, no, I don't think we do. So
it's actually really challenging to own code that's part of the Kubernetes code base for liability, and there's this combination of open source and Google owned code is tricky apparently.
Yeah, so we haven't heard back from the legal team yet, so I will update that request and I will update you guys next week.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for the update. If anyone else has any questions, is a good time to ask.
Just quickly, since you were asking, we found a volunteer on the GCE PD side for doing some the CSI plugin. I'm hoping that'll be done this quarter and then wire it in next quarter.
I thought there was already someone working on GCE PD plugin, CSI plugin.
There is. So we're hoping that it will be done this quarter, and then but they wanted some help, and I volunteered to help them get that wired in next quarter.
Okay, great. Awesome. Write that down.
The other thing that is useful to mention here is that the cloud provider extraction made it through the various gates. Many thanks to Walter and Caleb for pushing that through. Let me see, can I?
So I linked it in the cloud provider Slack channel.
Oh, great.
And if anyone feels like they want to make amends, please feel free to just send a PR out with any changes you feel need to be made to that.
The KEP process does need some exercising, so if other folks have ambitious projects, I encourage you to go through that process and help find the warts and improve the process along the way as well.
Yep.
So now we officially said we're going to do it. We better get busy and get her done.
All right, it's finally official now.
Yeah.
All right. If it sounds like there are no more updates, if anyone has the name suggestions for the repository, please put them in the Slack, or we can discuss it at the next week's meetup. If not, see you all next week.
See you next week. Thanks, everyone.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.